Every government claims to serve the people. Every politician promises stability, prosperity, and growth. But behind the speeches, behind the campaigns, there is another force, quieter, more technical, but far more powerful. That force is the central bank. Central banks don't march in parades. They don't run for office. Most people can't even name the people in charge. Yet these institutions decide how much money exists, who gets bailed out, which banks live, and which banks die. They can make your mortgage cheaper, your savings worthless, or your retirement fund collapse, all without a single vote from you. This is the secret history of central banks, how a handful of institutions became the real power brokers of the modern world. To understand their rise, we need to go back to the 17th century. Europe was in turmoil. Wars drained treasuries. Kings spent lavishly. And governments were constantly short on hard money. In England, King William III needed cash to fund war against France. But lenders were wary. The crown had a reputation for defaulting. This new institution had a special privilege. It could issue notes, paper promises backed by the government's debt. For the first time, money in circulation was not just metal coins, but paper backed by the credit of the state. The Bank of England became both the king's creditor and the nation's banker. The lesson was clear. Control the flow of credit and you control the state itself. Other nations copied the model. Sweden had founded the Riksbank earlier in 1668, but it was the Bank of England that became the prototype. Over the 18th and 19th centuries, central banks spread across Europe. By the Napoleonic era, the link between war and finance was unmistakable. Napoleon's armies marched on credit as much as gunpowder. Britain's ability to borrow through its central bank gave it the financial muscle to outlast France. The pound sterling backed by the Bank of England became the anchor of the global financial system. Wars were not just won on battlefields. They were won in the balance sheets of central banks. The United States financial system had long been fragmented and chaotic. Banks issued their own notes. Panics erupted when confidence failed. The most famous came in 1907. It wasn't the government that saved the day. It was a private banker, J.P. Morgan. In 1913, after years of debate and secret meetings on Jekyll Island, Congress created the Federal Reserve System. World War I was the first great test. Central banks stepped in. They printed money, issued bonds, and kept governments solvent. The German Reichsbank, under political pressure, printed marks until they became worthless. Weimar's hyperinflation remains the most infamous example. The Great Depression showed their darker side. When the bubble burst in 1929, the Federal Reserve failed to act aggressively. In 1944, representatives from 44 nations gathered in Bretton Woods. The US dollar, backed by gold, would sit at the center. The illusion shattered in 1971. President Richard Nixon announced that the dollar would no longer be convertible to gold. In the 1980s, Paul Volcker raised interest rates to nearly 20%. In 2008, central banks created trillions through quantitative easing. In 2020, the process went into overdrive. This is the hidden truth. Central banks are not neutral referees. They are power brokers. Every bailout makes the system more dependent on their rescue. So what does this mean for you? Resilience lies not in promises from bankers, but in assets they cannot create at will. Gold, land, skills, productive businesses. The people we never vote for control the money we cannot live without. If this gave you a new perspective, make sure to subscribe to Bull Battle and hit the notification bell. The answers aren't hidden in the future. They're written in the past.